Hello and welcome to the latest Science of Sport podcast. I'm your host Matt Solomon, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Sam Warburton. So Sam is a former professional rugby player, having captained Cardiff, Wales and the British and Irish Lions. He now spends his time as a broadcaster, working for BT Sport and BBC Sport, as well as writing for the Times newspaper. And in addition to that, he's founded the SW7 Academy, which helps rugby players improve their sporting performance. So without further ado, it's time to welcome Sam onto the show. So Sam, welcome to the Science of Sport podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Mate, I'm a genuine listener. I was honoured when you come through and asked me to jump on. So thanks for having me on, Matt. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. And our highest profile listener, apart from my mum. So thanks for giving that one.
Oh, you'd be surprised. I think you've got a great platform, really informative. So no, thanks for what you're doing, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So for those who don't know who you are, can you give us a quick introduction as to who you are and what you've been up to until now?
Yeah, so my name's Sam Warburton. I'm a former professional rugby player, played and captained for Cardiff, Wales and the British and Irish Lions, and now I do more work in broadcasting for rugby, and I've obviously hence been on the podcast. I've got a massive thirst for S&C, so I'm involved in the S&C world a bit now with various companies, which we'll probably come on to. So, but if in another life, if I wasn't a professional rugby player, I would have loved to have been a professional strength and conditioning coach, hence my love for the podcast and all things strength and conditioning.
Oh, mate, and you'd age about 10 years in about 3 days' time, so I wouldn't recommend it just based on keeping some good looks, so don't do that.
Well, mate, tackling with your face in rugby for 10 years makes you age pretty badly too.
You've got away with it there, to be fair. You could have smashed nose all over your face.
Yeah, my teeth is all right. I'm actually been put off a nose operation for the last 2 years. I can't breathe through my nose. It's not so surprised when people see me in the flesh. The surgeon thinks I've had about 20 microfractures over the years, so I got an operation on my nose. It will be my 8th operation for my career coming up in the summer. So I'm going to have to walk around with those Hannibal Lecter masks for like 10 days. Doing the school runs, they're going to be calling the police. So it's going to be terrible.
Mate. Excellent. So, but like, obviously, you've got that fantastic career behind you. But what are you up to now? So, like, obviously, rugby was a big deal. Like, you've moved on from that a little bit. What's keeping you busy now?
Yeah, so the broadcasting's good. I'm covering live rugby games, which I absolutely love. Rugby's like my sport, so I absolutely love doing that. But I've managed to scratch the strength and conditioning itch with. I founded a company. As all wise ideas, we started it in 2020, 3 months before COVID hit.
Brilliant.
Do you know what? It's been. I've loved it. It's been awesome. And like I mentioned, I've loved S&C. So whenever I was a player, if you have an intern S&C come in, I always got on with them really well. Always got on with the heads of performance and the strength and conditioning coaches. I would always pick their brains. Well, I'm not actually questioning you because I doubt it. I want to learn, and. I did a little bit of a distance learning course for strength and conditioning. I did attempt a degree while I was playing, but it was too much when I had various tours coming up, so I had to put it on the back burner. But then I'm still really friendly with a lot of those coaches. My brother's a professional rugby physio at the same club that I played in, so I love picking his brains on anatomy and injuries and rehabilitation. So I've got, over the years, I'm 34 now, and I've been involved since I was 16. Yeah, I've got no qualifications to my name. Put my hand up, but, I say that. But I've got a lot of knowledge. I understand a lot, whenever they got the Tendo machines out and VBT and all these things, I absolutely loved it. So I've managed to develop quite a lot. And I thought, well, I was that sort of young guy scouring around. I know you've got the internet now, but I used to read, have subscriptions for Flex magazine back in the day. You're probably my age and you sort of remember that. And I absolutely loved all these things. I see kids training now, and we probably come on to it, but I see so many mistakes that young guys and girls make when they come to training. So we're like, right, look, we'll show you how you can train like a professional athlete. And we sort of branched off into a little bit like some general consumer market stuff as well, so you can get your bodybuilding fix as well. But I do that now, and I absolutely love it. We've actually snowballed a bit, and now we've got a bit of a team involved and an office, and it's fab, So it's a genuine passion of mine, and like good advice a lot of people give, pick a passion to do something as a career, because when it gets tough, the passion will pull you through, and that's absolutely the case when it comes to anything strength and conditioning related. So yeah, I got a few things going on. Like I mentioned, involved with a couple of like a supplement company and things like that. But that's just because I love it. I absolutely love it. So yeah, it's good fun.
Absolutely excellent, mate. And like looking back in your career, before we get onto all the fun S&C stuff, I want to know what's the highlight? Like what's the most enjoyable part that you can look back on and go, oh, that was really good.
Good question. people probably think it's going to be like a moment on the pitch, because that's when obviously all the cameras are on and the big crowds and things. It was actually, so for those who don't know, I'll just really give a quick explanation. I presume that you'd know what the British and Irish Lions are, but every 4 years they pick the best players from England, Scotland, Ireland and Wales, and they tour one of the big 3 countries down south in rugby, which was, it's always historically been New Zealand, South Africa and Australia. And you tour each country once every 4 years. So you tour New Zealand once every 12 years and so on, if that makes sense. I was lucky enough to captain the side on 2 separate tours in 2013 and 17. And when I was a 14-year-old boy, I was watching these tours growing up, and I absolutely loved the Lions. I was like, right, I have to do that. And my dad brought home a questionnaire once. He was a fireman. He came home from work. He brought him a questionnaire, and he said, "Oh, Sam, do you mind just filling out this questionnaire? It's for a mate in work. His son's doing a school project, some homework. Just write what you want." So I had a look at it, and it just said name, age, sports, position, and ambition. So I just wrote down name Sam Warburton, age 14, sport rugby union, position I was open side flanker, which is a number 7, and then it said ambition, and I wrote down. I'm not exaggerating the story. I feel a bit arrogant saying this, but this is what I wrote down. I just wrote down British and Irish Lions rugby legend, and I give it back to my dad, and he went, "What are you doing?" I was like, "What?" He said, "You can't write that. It's a bit arrogant." And I was like, "But that's what I want to be, though. I don't want to be one of 800 or 1,000 people who ever been capped for the Lions. I want to be like one of the best ever." So like growing up, I think that's when my obsession on S&C kicked in. I got a multi-gym, saved up all my pocket money, was washing cars, for the family, and I had a twin brother, so we clubbed together. Got a multi-gym, put it in the garage, just go around running late at night, obsessing to play for the test match for the Lions. Because if you're going to start for the Lions, they've got 15 players in a rugby team. The amount of registered rugby players there are in UK and Ireland, you've got to be on average to play your position the best. You've got to be the best guy out of 75,000 people. That's the sort of ratio to start for the Lions. So I got to do this, and I was obsessed. And my dad bought me a Lions number 7 shirt for Christmas when I was that year when I was 14, 15. And I wore it everywhere. Like I mentioned, I was training, non-school uniform days, and when I was going to school, I swapped my my honey sandwiches for like ham and tuna sandwiches because there was more protein, and the crisp for bananas. I was obsessed, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, fast forward 10 years when I was 24, my first tour in 2013 as captain against Australia, and I was picked to start for the test team. And they did a shirt presentation the night before the big games. They brought in a Lions legend to give us our shirts. But normally when you go to a game, your shirts are just up from 1 to 23, subs as well, in the changing room when you turn up off the bus. But this was a Friday night, day before the games. The kit man came up to me, and we all had our jerseys in our hands, the boys who were picked, because they do like special presentations for big games. And he said, "Oh, Sam, normally the kit is in the changing room tomorrow. Do you want me to get the jerseys back off the lads now, and you'll see it like normal tomorrow, or do you want to take it to the game yourself?" And I went, "Mate, there's no way in hell you're taking this off me now. Like this is mine.
It's mine.
No, you're not taking this."
I'm going to bed in that.
Yeah, and I went back up to my hotel room. I laid it out flat. This red Lions shirt with a number 7 on the back. This very same shirt that I had when I was a 14-year-old boy, and because my dad asked me, maybe a year after when he bought me the shirt at that Christmas when I was young, he said, "Where's that shirt gone?" I said, "Dad, I'm not going to wear it. I put it away because the next one I got to get has got to be the real thing." And I put it away, and I wouldn't wear a Lions shirt until I played for the Lions. So I had this moment 10 years later. I laid this shirt out on my bed with a number 7 facing up, pushed out all the creases, and I stared at it. And I went to leave the room, and I came back because I just had to look at it. And then I went to leave the room, and for the third and final time, I just stared at this Test 7 shirt for the Lions. And that was actually the best moment of my career, because it made me realise that 10 years of sacrifice, hard work, resilience, belief, and I got to the top. And that's kind of like, it's a very similar journey when it comes to strength and conditioning. Like any good coach will tell you, there's no quick fix. The players who get to the top in any walk of life, or athletes, whatever, are the ones who are willing to do the work diligently for a long time. And that's why you see these 20-year-olds who are playing, just graduated from rugby academies, playing professional rugby, and they look freaky, and their statistics are freaky. And these kids are like, they're taking stuff and supplements we can't have access to. It's like, no, it's not. It's just they've been willing to do the work. Say it's a gym-based session, you work on strength and power. That's only one quality of a rugby player, but it's an important one. They've been in the gym 3 times a week for most weeks of the year for the last 4 or 5 years. You add up all those training units, mate, you will blow yourself away with how much stronger, more powerful you will be. But that's just what it takes to get to the top. So that was my best moment of my career, because it was well away from the cameras, behind closed doors, but it was just that moment, and we won in that jersey as well. So it's the only jersey I've got up in my house. It's just that knowing that all that effort, was worthwhile, and that was actually strangely, away from the pitch, but that was the best moment of my career.
Mate, that's a special story as well. But like when you can take moments like that and they're fantastic. But when you look back at the role of sports science and strength and conditioning to get you to places like that in your career, like what kind of role did that play for you? Because obviously it can be different for everyone, and you're super obsessed with it, so it's going to be a bit more exaggerated with you. But what happened in that process?
I think, when you're, and I guess most people listen to this will obviously enjoy strength and conditioning and fitness, and so like, they'll understand. But, when you want to be good at something, you do whatever you're looking for all the marginal gains. So if you're looking at it from an S&C perspective, it's like, okay, well, what's optimal training loads? What about running speeds and volumes and high speed meters? And, rest days. How do you rest and how do you recover? What about sleep? What about nutrition? I think that's one of the most underserviced aspects of being a professional sports person. So I, from a young age, knew what my protein consumption should be. I did have nutritional advice. They can't just tell you when you're young what to eat, but I wanted to know the formula so I could do it myself. I don't like strict, rigid diet plans. I like to know, okay, well, what should my calorie hit be? What should my protein target be? What sort of foods should I be using for fuel pre-session? What should I be using for recovery post-session? I wanted to understand that, so I didn't just follow a piece of paper. I actually wanted the knowledge myself, so I understood what I was going through. So when you add all these tools together, you suddenly look at a player who's a good player, or an athlete who's a good athlete. And I had a good genetic ability. I could tell in school I was good at, I could sprint, I could jump. Fitness was the hardest one, actually. My sort of aerobic capacity was pretty poor, but I was much more of the sort of down the strength power end of the continuum as an athlete. So I knew I was genetically quite lucky. I'm 6'3" and pretty explosive guy, so I thought that was good. But that's not worth much if you're not willing to put in all those other aspects into your lifestyle. And I think the players who understand that, they understand that they actually make being a professional athlete a lifestyle. And yes, you can switch off. You're allowed to have a bit of alcohol once in a blue moon, and you can go on a holiday. You can eat pizza, chill out, don't worry, But if 90% of the time, 95% of the time you're on, and you do that for a long amount of time, then it's enormous. So there's obviously a lot of moving parts to that. But a coach I work with now, actually, I mentioned the online programming at SW7 Academy. The coach I use now was actually the coach I had at Academy when I was 15, and I loved him. I really liked him, and he followed me through. He graduated with me. We both went into the senior team. He was coaching me at senior level. Got my first cap under his guidance, and we still stayed friends and reconnected now post career because I love a lot of what he does. And if you talk about strength and power, he's a massive advocate on VBT, which I love. Velocity based training. It stops people from just crushing themselves and wondering why they're not making progress, so I've loved that. And I remember doing that when I was young, and now there's some pretty cool tech around that. But you add all those bits into the pot, and that will make a good youth player into an exceptional top class athlete. But they've got to be willing to add all these other lifestyle aspects into their life as well.
And when you look back at your career and how that changed throughout that, what you just mentioned, as a youth athlete, you had everything that you needed and you wanted all that information. But how did that change your physical training throughout your career? Because obviously at some point you're pretty strong, you're pretty fast, and you just need to not die every week to make sure that you're pretty much right. To just survive until next week, and you can have another go, right? So how did that change? Yeah,
you're right. So when you're young, you're a lot more durable. You are a lot more durable, and I sort of mentioned quickly earlier, I had 8 operations. That doesn't include neuropraxia, like nerve damage I've had in my neck and shoulder. Doesn't include multiple muscle tears, ligament damage, dislocations, concussion. I had 3.5 years injured. So when you get older, when I say to people, look, 2 to 3 strength and power stimuluses a week is all you need when you're an athlete, and it's for 45 minutes, each. It's not a massive amount of stimulus you need just to keep what you've got, and even progress still, in season, because you've got to combine significant running loads of up to 15, 20 kilometres at various speeds, throughout the week. So you can't just, yes, rugby is a massive collision sport, but you can't just focus on the strength and power. But then exercise section changes a lot. When I was young, I was doing a lot more Olympic lifting, more hang cleans. front squats to complement that, a lot more back squatting. But as you get older then, and it's because of the bumps and, when you play 200 pro games and each pro game has, 50 contacts, you're looking at thousands and over 10,000 contacts, and that doesn't include training or your youth career. Yeah. So, you have to manage that load. So it became then things like a lot of sled work, belted squats. Bulgarians is probably one of my all-time favourites, just slightly sort of less axial loading, really, just because you could do it if you didn't have all the running and playing demands. But when you have running and playing demands and suddenly you have to manipulate your training. So as I got older, I moved towards the more... I don't want to say joint friendly because all exercises can be joint friendly when done properly, but I guess they suited the schedule of a rugby player much better. And then there was more use of VBT, so you're not sort of crushing the nervous system early in the week, and then you're not recovering in time, and then you sort of get that accumulative fatigue throughout the season, and you're wondering why you're feeling like rubbish. It's like, well, you've been trying to crush every weight session for the last 3 months. Like, you can't do that. You have to sort of trust the process is one bit of advice I had. Trust the process and build slowly and have patience, So that's kind of how my training changed from in the gym. And I kind of stuck to that now. So I don't really do much Olympic lifting. Every now and then I will, just because the alpha in me comes out and I want to sort of see if I can do, what I did when I was young and I was lifting ridiculous weight. But I was mechanically a lot stronger when I was 19 to 23. I'm nowhere near those levels now, but every now and then I'll dip into it, and I might have a little reminder from my lower back that, whoops, Sam, calm down. We've all been there.
Just can't cash.
Yeah, but I don't hopefully answer your question. But that's kind of how it's certainly changed in the gym, and even things like everyone always asks the famous questions of rugby players: what you bench? And like, mate, we don't bench. We neutral grip dumbbell. We floor press. We do things like that because it's just more friendly on the shoulders. Even press up with plates, press up with bands. You can still tax your chest and you can work that push in a horizontal plane without having to just smash the barbell. I do like to barbell bench, by the way. I'm not crucifying it. I do like it, but sometimes when you've played a game of rugby, it's not the optimal exercise to do. 48, 72 hours after a game. So they're the subtle changes you make in the gym when you're an athlete.
I think that's really interesting. And when you look at those things, obviously it's quite a grown up viewpoint. You're saying this now as a grown up, but like, let's say you were 20 years old and you're not quite as well versed. Is there anything that you look back on and you think, you know what, like, I should have done that differently, or I wish I'd have known this when I was 20 because that would have made me a difference?
Do you know what? I have no regrets, but I do have a really big bit of advice, and it's a really boring one, but I promise you is vital. And I had a shoulder op when I was 18. I had a knee op when I was 19. So I quickly realised the importance of rehabilitation. But I think one of the most underestimated aspects of training, and for longevity as well, would be prehab and mobility, whether it's for your knees, ankles, more importantly for rugby players, shoulders and thoracic mobility. Massively underrated. So say like a training plan that I'll dish out now, or that I did as a player, you would never start a session without doing, when I say 5 minutes of prehab, people think that's not enough, but when you do 5 minutes of prehab, say you do 2 upper body sessions a week, and you do 5 minutes of prehab, 5 minutes of shoulder and thoracic mobility, so it's 10 minutes in total twice a week, that's 20 minutes. So, accumulatively, that adds up over a season. And, when you're doing shoulder prehab, I'll pick 3 exercises that can work, low trap, rotator cuffs, things like that. And then I'll do 5 minutes of thoracic mobility work. You can cram a lot of work in 10 minutes when you're doing that, because you you don't need much rest time. Sort of just get 3-4 exercises, do them in a carousel. You'll get 3 circuits of those 4 sort of prehab exercises. So you got 9 to 12 sets of stimulus from a prehab perspective in 5 minutes, quite easily, So, and then you do your mobility, and then say you have an hour then in the gym, then you've got 50 minutes to focus on weights, or 45 minutes. So I always say that's the biggest mistake youngsters make. They really neglect mobility. They really neglect prehab. And then when they get older, they're wondering why they've got severe impingement at the age of 25, 26, because all they've done is just crush heavy weights and they haven't actually looked after the sort of more important aspect of their joint health and how they are functionally. So that's my biggest bit of advice. I do it now religiously, because I know if I don't, and I kind of look at it indirectly as strength training, because, well, if I don't do this, I get pain. And if I get pain, I can't go heavy. And if I can't go heavy, I can't get the strength stimulus I want. So I kind of see it indirectly as strength training almost, which made me feel better about it. That's how I kind of got around it psychologically. But that was, luckily it wasn't a regret for mine. I've got no regrets for my physical preparation. I thought I was pretty good. Mind you, I look back now and I'm looking at some of the science that's coming out regarding ice baths, and we were massive advocates of cryotherapy. So I look back and I wonder whether that could have been tweaked. We used to use a cryotherapy chamber in our national training base. And I guess there's lots of benefits. It depends what you want to prioritise. Do you want to prioritise like sleep and the mental aspects of maybe some cold therapy exposure, or do you want to benefit from sort of like hypertrophy and building muscle? And it depends which your goal is. If your goal is like hypertrophy and building muscle, then maybe you use a little bit less of it, So that's maybe only one thing I might have questioned a bit more if I was a player, but I didn't have the knowledge back then around that. I just sort of listened, let's do cryo, it's good for us. But again, I'm still sort of learning, as we all are. Every day there seems to be new research coming out and new meta-analyses I like to get stuck into. So, but I don't have any regrets. But that would be my one big advice for young players: don't neglect mobility and prehab.
And I think it's nice advice as well to be critical of what you're doing. So in a positive way, but to just accept, okay, we do cryo because it's good for us. Or maybe have a little think and read about it and what are the potential downsides, or just ask your sports scientist, S&C, whatever.
Yeah.
Because there are loads of advantages and disadvantages to things, and these professionals weigh that up and go, probably on the balance we'll do this. Yeah,
exactly.
But for your own understanding, linking back to your first point in the podcast, absolutely fantastic that you want to take all that information and actually deal with it yourself. So I think that's a really interesting one for kids listening who could potentially improve that as well.
I think just, like over years, and over years and years and years, like when and like the very basic first entry level is when I was sat at a machine, when I was in like an old commercial gym when I was 15, pretending I was 16, and you're looking at what muscle groups it uses and what plane of motion it is, and then you're doing your GCSE, PE, and you absorb all of that, and then you go out and read yourself. And for me, that the early reading was bodybuilding magazines, and then suddenly you start picking the brains of coaches, and then you actually apply it practically, and then you're looking at what you're doing. And then I suddenly add the layer of, then you look at the research that's coming out as well, and what does that back up? And then once you add all those things in, you put time into learning. You never know everything all the time. You've got to constantly be seeking that advice. So those who want to be really good at what they do, well, one, if you're enjoying it, you're probably going to enjoy looking for the information. But I just recommend just to read, like if you're reading just for 5 minutes a day, over years you're going to learn so much. I don't do anywhere near as much reading as a full-time S&C coach, but I just do enough that I can satisfy my thirst for knowledge. But once you do that for a long time, you'll educate yourself enormously. So I recommend for people just to do a little bit of that, do a bit of reading, pick the brains of coaches that you like, and learn off what they do. And they might open your eyes as well. I think a lot of people can be very stubborn in their beliefs and not want to change their views. And I've changed my views on many things. I used to crush myself in the gym, and I've actually learned to sometimes actually less is a bit more. I used to probably train too hard. So once you sort of have your eyes open, you speak to experts who know more than you, then you keep that growth and you keep learning.
Absolutely excellent, mate. And you mentioned VBT earlier as obviously some great technology out there. What kind of technology do you think is like the stuff which is really important for players to be looking at, or stuff that you're jealous that they've got now which you might not have had back in the day?
Yeah. I mentioned VBT, but that's been around for quite a while. Been using that, I never knew. I just did it, but now I actually understand it, so I do it myself. And I just be in my garage, I can set it up, and so VBT is one. But I still, do you know what surprised me? I still see a lot of professional environments who don't use VBT, which actually really surprises me. You think that they want to be on the cutting edge of all this technology. Another one is blood flow restriction. I'm involved with a company called Hytro. I actually think their product's so good, I invested in it myself, and I thought blood flow restriction. I was that young teen. I'm sure you were probably like me, like sticking elastic bands around my arms and just trying to get a ridiculous pump in the mirror in the commercial gym. Like
Saturday before you go out, I've been there.
Low cut V-neck, we've all been there.
Oh, mate. Yeah.
So yeah, like, you know, and I was that guy. Like, you know, I grew up in the era. I'm an '88. I was born in '88. So anyone listening to this in the noughties is going to be and earlier is lost then. But I grew up with the biker mice on TV. Mate, the biker mice were these stacked mice with massive arms, and I reckon that was my inspiration when I was like 10 to like try and be big, you know.
Yeah.
So like, but then I used to use blood flow restriction purely for that, and it is, and you can obviously still use it for that. It's good because you don't have to lift extortionate amounts of weight. You can sort of get similar effects in a short space of time. So I didn't really use that when I was a player, but that would have been so handy because you're so time poor as a player because you've got, yes, I know you're full time, you've got to train, but you've got analysis, you've got skill development, you've got meetings, you've got recovery, you've got all these things. So I think that would have been a really handy tool to have used more as a player, just to help maintain some muscle mass when you're in season, because it's hard to do a lot of volume in season. So I think blood flow restriction, the garments that Hytro have got, just make that really easy to apply practically. And then what they actually educated me on, because I was well aware of it when I sort of saw the company, I was like, oh, brilliant, I'd love that for training. Then I realised actually the recovery benefits. And as simple as getting a garment on, say lower body garment, having a 5-minute spin when you're strapped in, unstrapping it for 2 minutes, and then strap again for 5 minutes, have a spin, unstrap for 2 minutes, do it again for a third and final time of 5 minutes. And then the recovery benefits you can get from blood flow restriction, I thought that blew my mind. That's when I really realised, oh, this is actually something I want to get involved in, because I thought it was just a sort of muscle gain kind of a technique. But when I realised the recovery implications, and you've seen a lot of pro sports teams now really buying into it, you know, there's a lot of travel involved, and like I said, time is quite minimal. When you've got short turnarounds, for example, you know, you can play games in quite short turnarounds. Any advantage you can get from a recovery perspective is brilliant. So Hytro have got these garments, which upper body and lower body, but massively beneficial from in the gym when you're training for sort of say muscle gain and getting some hypertrophy, but also for recovery as well. I was blown away with the benefits of that and the research that backs it up as well. You know, not just because it looks sexy, it's pretty biz-backed, you know. So I was actually really impressed with that. So that's something I didn't use as much as a player. I use it now and I experiment with it now as an athlete. I call myself an athlete. You're forever an athlete, are you? You're an athlete. You know, we're all athletes. You know, we all train like we're like, you know, if you're trying to get physically better, you're an athlete in my eyes. You know, you're trying to improve your physical performance. But I didn't have that benefit of knowing what Hytro do back then. So if they were around when I was a player, it would have been another one of those layers I would have added to my routine religiously, because I would have known the benefits of it.
Absolutely excellent, mate. And we're like, obviously, before we run out of time completely, I want to have a quick talk about what you're doing now with SW7 Academy. So you've talked us through what you're doing there, but can you talk us through, so for example, a week plan that you give for a rugby player? Like, I'd be really interested to see all of this coming together and being like, right, this is how I would like to program for a rugby player in this period.
Yeah, good question. And we get actually, you know, a lot of kids, you know, we're on the Instagram a lot, and a lot of kids will message us going, oh, I've got a push-pull leg split, and I play on a Saturday. I'm like, back up. Like, you're doing 6 days, you've probably got 2 significant running loads on a Tuesday, Thursday with your club, and you're playing Saturday. You've got 9 bouts of very significant stimulus. Okay, way too much, and you're wondering why you're not gaining weight, you're not getting stronger, you're not getting more explosive. So when you're rugby players, and this is what we kind of program for our more performance plans, we kind of either look at a upper, lower, full body, so 3 days a week, or we look at 3 full bodies. So they're the kind of splits, because they're you know, you will still want to stimulate the muscle, ideally more than once a week. Certainly, you know, you want to stimulate that muscle twice a week. 3 is pretty good. You know, if you're not feeling too fatigued from a Saturday game, you can train on a Monday. But then as you go towards that 3rd session, that's going to be much more power stimulus. So you're on that speed strength end of the continuum. You know, you're not going to be doing, you know, very heavy sort of mechanical loads towards the back end of the week. That's more the front end of the week. So, and then you can sort of complement, you know, speed is a really good precursor, we find, to weight training. So, you know, warm up is the longest part of a speed session, but having then just 10-15 minutes of speed stimulus before you might go into a sort of speed strength power session, you know, total, you know, a speed strength power session might be, you know, half an hour, you know, because you don't need to warm up, because you're already warmed up from the speed aspects of it. So you could do that in an hour. You can get great stimulus. You can get speed from a pitch perspective, and power development within an hour, in one session. And then your 2 earlier sessions in the week could be either upper or lower, or 2 full bodies, depending on how you're feeling. You've got 3 really good bouts of stimulus in the week, and then you can complement that with your club rugby training or your game on a weekend. And if you don't have a game on the weekend, then what I really loved as a player was we get given what was called game replacement sessions. So rather than just running 5K, that's very, like these are the basics that you learn all the way back when you're a teenager. Specificity. How specific is a 5K run? So I love the work ethic when young athletes, like I run 5K, I run 10K, and I play rugby. I'm like, okay, I love the work ethic. In a game of rugby, you probably do cover between 4 and 8K, depending on the level you're playing at. But it involves contact, it's multi-directional, it's acceleration, deceleration, change of direction, up and off the ground. So you've got to replicate that. So, then being able to provide a game replacement type session, which is, long story short, would be the simplest way to explain it would be like your strongman, but with some running involved. So, you're flipping tires, you're pulling things, you're pushing things, you're wrestling, you're doing interval runs. That's very specific to a game of rugby, getting up and off the floor. So then if a player doesn't have that stimulus on the Saturday, providing that option for a stimulus on the Saturday as well, so they can keep their match fitness going as well. So that would be how like a typical week would look. But yeah, I think if there's any youngsters listening to this and they're smashing it in the gym, my advice would actually be, if you haven't made much progress, maybe you're doing too much. And I think that's actually, it feels counterintuitive, and rest days need to be rest days. And it's things like, I used to quiz this as a player. We'd like train Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but I used to be like, I don't really like that, because say you're on the pitch Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you chuck in a fitness and a speed session in there as well on top of lower body weights. I'm like, we're putting our, like, say from your hamstrings, we're doing high speed meters 3 days in a row. Like, and my brother's a physio, so I like pick his brains. He's like, mate, absolutely. Like, on that 3rd day, you're entering pretty dangerous territory. So when people's hamstrings go, I didn't stretch properly, it's like, well, no, you're probably done way too much volume. Like the reason your hamstring's gone is because you've done too much, or you've done too much and you're not conditioned enough. So I think making sure you get the timetable right, making sure you have rest days, and those rest days are rest days. You're not carrying golf clubs around a course for 8 kilometers. You're resting. I think that's the diligent part of being a professional that some youngsters find hard to adapt to, because it feels counterintuitive. But I love the work ethic, but actually you need to appreciate rest and nutrition and sleep are so important. They should be the cornerstones of what your recovery is. And for most of us who are lucky to live in advanced countries, most of those are free. So we're very lucky that we can get water for hydration. We can access good beds and we can sleep. And we have, obviously live in the UK. We have good access to food from supermarkets. So, make sure you get those 3 things right first. Then you can add, like we've mentioned, cold therapy if you want it, blood flow restriction if you want it. Which are really good. But if you're not getting the 3 cornerstones in place first, you get much more benefit from those sort of accessory modalities if you get the 3 big cornerstones done first properly.
Absolutely excellent. So Sam, massive thanks for your time and effort today. I really enjoyed that. I think it was a really interesting insight into your career, but also to how people can learn from that too. So where can people find out a little bit more about you?
Oh, cheers. Yeah, so we're on Instagram. Hytro is just at Hytro. SW7 Academy for the training plans is just SW7 Academy. If anyone's wondering, that's not the postcode in London, because my name's Sam Warburton and my number was 7. It's not. I haven't really thought a whole lot probably about this, but I just called it SW7 Academy. So
everyone rocks up to London and realises,
where's Sam? I thought he was going to train me. Yeah, so it's online. It's just an app on your phone. So it's a piece of cake. It's like just having a PT in your pocket. So yeah, SW7 Academy on Instagram. We're on TikTok now, getting down with the kids, Cool. Oh, mate, it's a new world to us, all that. So, yeah, you can find us on SW7 Academy and just at Hytro as well.
Perfect. Sam, massive thanks for your time. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to speaking again soon.
Thanks so much for asking me on, Matt, and looking forward to hearing your future episodes. Cheers, mate.
Cheers, buddy. And that's it. Once again, a massive thanks to Sam for all of his hard work on today's podcast. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure you do at home too. Before you leave, I want to point you in the direction of the Science of Sport Coach Academy. Now, the Coach Academy is an overgrowing library of sports science resources which are broken down into bite-sized chunks, and that means you can fit it in and around your busy coaching schedule. In addition, every time you complete one of the mini courses, you'll get a certificate of completion, which means you can prove your ongoing education. So if you want to get into the Coach Academy completely for free for the next 7 days, you can hit the link in the show notes and get in there in just a few seconds' time. And of course, if you have enjoyed today's podcast, it'd be fantastic if you could recommend us to a coach, a colleague, an athlete, or a friend. That means that we can keep bringing the best possible guests and best possible content. And that's it. Once again, a massive thanks from me. I'm Matt Solomon for Science of Sport, and I'll speak to you next week.